The night was heavy with smoke, the air alive with whispers, and the crowd pressed close together in uneasy silence. In the center of the square, a wooden stake towered above the people, its base wrapped in bundles of straw and dry timber. A woman was bound tightly to it, her face pale but defiant, her eyes fixed on the heavens. The flames had not yet been lit, but already the scent of fear lingered like a spirit among the people. They had come to watch a witch burn. For centuries in Europe, this sight became terrifyingly common. Men and women dragged from their homes, accused of impossible crimes, condemned by whispers, superstition, and paranoia. Some screamed their innocence until their last breath, while others confessed under the torture of twisted instruments, their words recorded as proof of guilt. And then, one by one, they were led to the fire. But why? What made entire societies believe that neighbors, healers, midwives, and outcasts were agents of the devil, deserving of such a death? The story begins in the dark corridors of Europe's past, when faith and fear ruled with equal power. The medieval world was one of plagues, famines, wars, and disasters that seemed to strike without warning. To a people who saw the hand of God and the touch of the devil in every event, suffering demanded explanation. When crops failed, when cattle died, when children sickened, someone had to be blamed, and that someone was often accused of witchcraft. In the shadows of villages, people whispered of strange women who gathered herbs by moonlight, who lived alone at the edge of the woods, who seemed to know too much about sickness and healing. They became convenient scapegoats, their knowledge transformed into suspicion. Midwives who had long brought new life into the world were now said to be agents of Satan, cursing the very children they delivered. Wise women who cured with herbs were accused of poisoning instead. Every talent became a threat. Every difference became danger. But suspicion alone was not enough to set entire continents aflame with witch hunts. Something far more powerful gave the fire its breath. As the Church tightened its grip during the late medieval and early modern periods, it declared that witches were not just eccentric outcasts, but soldiers of the devil himself. Witchcraft was no longer merely a sin, it was heresy, a crime against God, punishable by death. The fear of the devil's agents living among the faithful turned entire towns into cauldrons of paranoia. Inquisitors traveled across Europe, armed with grim books and darker imaginations. Manuals such as the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, described in chilling detail how to identify, question, and destroy witches. According to its pages, witches could fly, transform into animals, summon storms, and sleep with demons. More importantly, it declared that denying witchcraft was itself proof of guilt. With such logic, no one was safe. To be accused was to be condemned. Once suspicion fell upon someone, the machinery of terror began to grind. Torture chambers became factories of confession. The rack stretched bodies until joints popped. Hot irons seared flesh. Thumbs were crushed in screws. In their agony, the accused admitted to anything their interrogator suggested: pacts with Satan, midnight gatherings, unholy rituals. These confessions, wrung from pain, were used as proof. The more witches confessed, the more others were named, and the flames spread from town to town, country to country. But behind the veil of superstition, darker motives often hid. Accusations of witchcraft could settle old feuds, remove rivals, or punish those who defied authority. A poor widow with no family could be branded a witch simply because no one would defend her. A landowner might accuse a neighbor to seize their property. In times of famine or plague, communities lashed out against the most vulnerable. The fire did not burn witches alone. It burned the unwanted, the unkind, the inconvenient. And still, the people gathered at the stake, believing they were witnessing justice. The flames were said to purify the soul, to destroy the devil's power. As smoke curled into the night, villagers whispered prayers, convincing themselves that they had rid their town of evil. But beneath the chanting and the cries of the condemned, a deeper fear remained. If witches could be hiding anywhere, then who might be next? The witch hunts raged most fiercely between the 15th and 17th centuries. Germany, France, Switzerland, and Scotland became notorious killing grounds. In some towns, dozens were executed in a single day. Entire communities were torn apart, families destroyed, children left orphaned. Records speak of villages where half the women were accused, where the sight of fire became as familiar as the sight of dawn. Yet not all were silent witnesses. Some questioned the madness. Skeptics whispered that torture produced lies, that the devil's power was not proven by smoke and fire. But their voices were often drowned by the roar of fear and the authority of the church and state. To defend the accused was to risk accusation yourself. Silence became survival. Over time, however, the flames began to die. The Enlightenment brought new ways of thinking. Science replaced superstition, and courts began to doubt the confessions wrung by torture. Witch trials declined, though in some places they lingered into the 18th century. By then, tens of thousands had been executed across Europe, their names lost in smoke, their deaths remembered only as shadows in history. But the question remains, why were witches burned in Europe? Was it truly belief in the devil's power? Was it the manipulation of fear by those who craved control? Or was it the darker truth, that society always seeks an enemy, always looks for someone to blame, and in the flickering light of the pyre found its victims in the weakest among them? When we look back now, the stories chill us, not because of their distance, but because of their closeness. The witch hunts remind us of what fear can do, how quickly reason can be drowned by panic, how cruelty can be disguised as justice. The fires of Europe were not just about witches. They were about humanity's endless struggle with fear of the unknown. And perhaps that is why their story endures. Because every time the flames of suspicion are lit, every time a society turns against its own in search of hidden enemies, the ghosts of those burned witches return, whispering through the smoke, warning us of the danger of fear turned to fire.